What's going on, friends? It is Stand Up Sales episode 4 with my co-host Dylan Rich. What's up, dude?
How's it going?
Ticking along as always, man. I had a bad hair day, so that's why I'm wearing a hat. I don't have your luscious locks, I'm afraid. All right, tell them what's on the agenda today.
Yeah, so number one is we're talking about that draw between our two countries.
Why did I not know this was going to come up? All right, yeah, fine, okay, that's point one on the agenda. What's next? Let's get off this subject as fast as possible.
Yeah, so it's soccer.
God.
But no, big agenda here, guys, is we're going to be talking about one call closes versus two call closes when it's appropriate to position your sales process for one or the other. The second one would be discovery call versus a demo. Again, when you delineate when to have a discovery, then a demo, or to just jump right into discovery and demo on that call. And then when to use both, depending on your product, your niche, and your industry. Did I miss anything?
Nope, that's it. Sweet. All right. So, one call versus two call. One call. All right. We're going to talk about fucking football. All right. Yeah. It was the worst England showing probably of my entire football watching history. It was genuinely so flaccid. We were crap for the entire game.
Yeah, I didn't watch any of it, so I can't really talk too much of it. Terrible U.S. supporter here, very unpatriotic. But we do play Iran today at 2 p.m. If we win, we're into the knockout stage, which I think is essentially us winning the Super Bowl. So,
I mean, American exceptionalism really coming into itself there. You got to the knockout stages, and then at that point, you've basically won it. So why?
Yeah.
What? No, that's not how it works. There's
It's
another 31 teams.
Yeah, exactly. We did great. We're the best.
And that kind of sets the tone for the rest of this call. All right, so one call close versus two call closes. One call close is sexy. Everyone wants to do one call closes. When are they not appropriate?
When they have a real business.
Okay. More depth. More depth.
If they don't have any other departments or decision makers that need to be added into the call that aren't on the first call, I think that's when you need to delineate a one call versus a two call.
Yep.
Two call close. I got tongue tied. But if you're calling a 70-person SaaS startup, the chances of you doing a one call close with a high ticket offer is, in
Super
my
low.
experience,
Super low.
pretty low, 1%. Because they need to get things approved. There's budgets in place. There's other stakeholders that usually you're going to impact multiple areas of the business, hopefully, in your offer. And those people all have a say, right? These people are making 6-figure salaries. Their job is this. Plus, in SaaS companies, a lot of people have fancy titles and they need to feel included. And there's this whole org chart involved. So, if you're selling anything over a couple $1,000s, it's going to be a multiple call process.
I think the interesting part there is multiple stakeholders, right? So even if you're selling water to people on fire, there's going to be someone in an organization who will ask the question, oh yeah, but how do we know this works, right? And then they want to get involved in the conversation. I think the big thing that I found historically selling, not particularly high ticket, 3 to 5K, which is baby numbers in reality, right? When you look at the whole B2B marketplace, those are
for a business.
Yeah, baby numbers. There are going to be people who want, so we talk about this within sales psychology a lot, and it's you have to sell into different psychographic profiles, right? So there's going to be people who are way more analytical. There's going to be people who are way more broad brush strokes. Give me the top line. That's all I need to care about. Now, the bigger problems come when multiple people are on that first discovery call and you have to sell to basically two individuals who think completely fucking differently and do that effectively, right? Now, the problem kind of alleviates itself when you sell into one person in the disco call and then the second person comes in on the demo call, because at that point you have at least some semblance of understanding of where you stood in the first part. But multiple stakeholders are probably going to exist more broadly, potentially on the first call, the larger the organization gets. At least that's my experience on it.
Absolutely. And it's always better. And it's so hard when you have I mean, it's great as a salesperson when you see multiple people accepting an invite. You're like, oh, nice. Like there's actually a serious need here, and they're already looping in the people that need to be looped in.
Yeah.
But at that same time, it's so hard. I mean, it's hard enough to capture and garner the attention of like 2 people when you have like 4 with like all the distractions in the world. People are texting, people are looking at their Slack, their emails, people have their cameras off. It's like, it's very hard. So you have to identify very early in the call, like who do you need to win over the most?
Yep.
Like if you have the CEO and the director of digital marketing, like no offense, but you're talking to the CEO, right, on that call. So you have to understand who's on the call. It's important enough where you need to really own their attention.
I think I'm going to push back a little bit on that. I agree, broad strokes. I think you're right. Like, arguably, the most senior person in the room is going to be the one who's like the most useful to get buy-in from. But a lot of times that I've seen, you have the quote unquote the user of whatever service or product you're selling, and then whoever their boss is. And then at that point, like, yeah, it might be really beneficial to try and sell into the ultimate like economic buyer. But if you spend all of your time there and you get the economic buy-in, but the person who's actually going to be using the thing is like, actually, I didn't kind of get a lot of attention here, or I didn't get my questions answered here, so I'm going to go with the other person who did sell into my interests. The likelihood is having an advocate who's lower down the chain, who can go up and sell to their boss, is just as effective as just selling to the boss themselves.
I'll push back again. Like a champion,
go for it. Yeah, 100%.
A champion is great, right? Yep. But like there's a reason why
right?
There's a reason why they're not the CEO.
Yep.
So, and they're more feature oriented. Like a digital marketing person's like, ooh, this is cool. Ooh, this is super cool. And the CEO's like, is this what I fucking pay you for? Like, how does this alter my business? Like, what is this affecting my top line revenue? So, I mean, that's what I preach all the time is like business needs. That's pain. Pain 100%. Isn't like, ooh, I need to schedule my social medias across platforms because I'm lazy. Like, that's not a business need, right? That's a personal need and want. Like, you have to get down to the nitty gritty of like, all right, if a business need of that is like, how much time am I spending on you doing the same thing on all these other channels? Like, that's wasting money, right? So it's like understanding the business need versus the wants of the individual's role.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that. Okay,
yeah. So and like when you have a champion, like you put too many eggs in that champion.
That's fair. Over reliance on that person as like your way in is a surefire way of like thinking that you are way more further along the sale than you are.
Yeah, I've fallen into that a few times. Even like a CMO, right? Like still someone who's like pretty high up the food chain.
Yep.
But they can't sell this. It's like telephone, right? If I say something to somebody, it gets diluted, and they don't truly understand it, right? They're not as deep into the process, the sell, and the offer as you are, and they never will be.
Yep.
So, allowing them to sell a product for you is a terrible, terrible idea as a salesperson. Because they could say the wrong things, and the CEO's like, "Oh, I don't like that.
I have no interest in this thing." Yeah, 100%. Yeah. There is definitely a way of like coaching whoever you need to like sell in on your behalf to do it effectively. 100%, there is an effective way of doing it, but that is a skill in and of itself that kind of is a whole podcast worth of conversation. Like that is very, very deep and not something that most people will learn to do effectively.
A great thing to do is if you are talking to a champion, CC the CEO.
Yeah.
CC him an email.
Yeah. 100%.
It shows that you care, that you want him to know what you're saying, as well as it's unavoidable for the champion to like pussy out and not do what he says he's going to do. Like, oh, your boss is CC'd on this email, so what's up?
I'm about
to do it today. I have a situation. I've already been talking about it. I mean, they're on Pacific time, so I got to wait a little bit. But
I do that with response handling a lot. If I've had originally like a conversation with the CEO and they're like, yeah, 100%, I'm going to put this person on it, like have the conversation, be like, cool, great. If they ever ghost, I immediately CC the CEO back and be like, hey, I didn't hear back from you on this. When's a good time to reconnect about blank, 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 or how far has the deal gone through or whatever. And now immediately everything moves faster. Immediately. So, all right. Cool. So then we've talked about 1 call closes versus 2 call closes, I think both of us have more of a preference for a two call close because it allows you to bring in those secondary stakeholders. Like, have you seen one call closes work with like big legitimate businesses? Because I have, but they're so few and far between.
Yeah, it's just so. I mean, I think my understanding of like how we're going to talk about this is like structuring your sales process. Because if you structure your sales process for a one call close and it's not a one call close, that's going to suck on your resources. It's going to affect your business in general. Right? If you're like dedicating in your your mindset, it's like, oh, this hasn't closed in the first call. Like then maybe you don't nurture it as well. Mm-hmm. So like I think it's setting up your sales process in the beginning as you're building out a sales team, understanding like, all right, how many times have I closed in the first call and how many times have I not? Mm-hmm. Right? I think you need to take an honest audit of how you're currently closing.
Yep.
Your product or your service. But in a larger stage organization, I mean, they just move slower.
Yep. 100%.
Like whenever I talk to somebody who does a one call, people who close in the first call are usually a better business people because they see something they like, they understand that speed is a value, and you did a good job selling it, and they're ready to buy, right? Now, would you classify a one call close as like contract sent, not paid on that first call?
That's so tough because there's a gray area in there where it's like,
because all my calls, like there is a contract agreement being sent.
Yeah.
But it's usually, I mean, no one really does a credit card over the phone.
Yeah, no, that stinks. I hate that.
Yeah, it's like a weird, it goes back to our last, 2 calls or 2 episodes ago at Pushy Sales. But would you classify that as a one call close? Or
I would say I would give the benefit of the doubt of a one call close for contract sent at the end of call 1, maybe a 1-2 emails back and forth, and then contract signed. I'll give that as a one call close.
That's fair.
What about you?
I would tend to lean that same way. So what I classify as a 2 call close is like discovery call, demo, close.
Fine. So you're closing on the demo call then.
Yes, or you're saying that contract and sign in legal or whatever, but you essentially want a verbal on that second call. That's a second call. That's a 2 call close. So I think that leads us into our next point, which is like delineating when you should be doing just discovery and then scheduling a demo / closing call compared to doing everything at once.
My big perspective on this, and like I think like most things about the shit that I try and like put forward to the people that we teach and like in my own business, like simple scales better, right? Like ultimately the easiest calls, quote unquote, are going to be with businesses that you understand the best. If you can understand in your own mind with like a great degree of clarity how that business is going to be impacted by what you do, the problems that they face, and voice that back to them in a way that they understand, they are going to be easier closes, right?
Yep.
Therefore, you can probably get away with doing a really solid discovery, having a really like succinct pitch and closing on a one call when the business and the function that you provide is so simple. However, most businesses are not like that. So I think for me, the like degree of complexity between your service and the businesses that you're going into, the more complex the business and the more complex the service, the more likely it is you're going to need a 2 call discovery first, then demo.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're selling like any type of like software, like they're going to need to see it most of the time.
So then let's say you're not selling software, right? Because discovery and demo is very much used in like SaaS sales. Let's say it's a service. So it's your bog standard lead generation service. How does this actually play out? Because you're not going to be demoing anything on the second call. So what actually happens in that second call?
So the second call, you could use it as like a Q&A and overview of the proposal, because a lot of things get lost in translation, right?
Yep.
Like they might not have taken great notes. Your recap email might be lacking. then now they get a proposal. They look at it 4 days after. They're like, oh shit, I got this call with this lead gen guy. Let me look at the Panda doc real quick. Yeah, let me look at the email real quick. I'm kind of busy. I don't really want to do this. Let me just have the call and let's just. Then you're kind of like, you were in the red zone. Now you're at midfield.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, this is going to be a closing call, and the guy's like, yeah, what were we talking about again? How much was this?
Yeah.
So like a lot of people, once that first call happens, like
start
what
counting chickens.
Yeah, exactly. Like you are assuming the sale too much, and you haven't really done enough to assume the sale. So that first call, whether it's a 1-call close, even more so, or a 2-call close, like that first call is like the most important call. Like don't rely on the second call to do your selling. Like you should be selling on the first call, even if it is a discovery, because discovery is the most important part of sales. Because, the better you do your first call, the better your second call is going to go.
Yeah. And I think the big thing that a lot of people, in my mind, fuck up with discovery is it becomes information gathering with no tangible next step or outcome. There is no point in asking a million questions that don't further the sale and you just feeling good at the end of it because you're like, okay, great, I booked the second call and I found out loads about them. It's like, okay, and are they any closer to being sold than when they got on the call? No, they're not. But I found out a ton of information that I can use for the second call, right? So I think your point about like selling from the get-go is important, but it's important not to misconstrue what that actually entails.
Yeah, tying the knot is what I call it. Is like taking all the information that you gathered, looping it back together with their needs and their pains, and then tying it all together and putting a bow on it.
Yeah, 100%. Because I think the big limiting factor most people have is that they know that they need to ask questions, right? That's like the drink water of sales, is just ask more questions. But first of all, if your questions are shit, that's bad. And if you don't ask questions that like actually get you anywhere, that's also bad, right? You can have great questions that are like interesting to the prospect and will make them think. Good. That's useful to have. And you can have questions that like potentially will improve your understanding of the business. Also great, useful to have. But if your questions don't further the sale in the prospect's mind, they're not achieving anything.
Yeah. Or you're just not using the information that you're getting to your advantage.
Yeah.
Like knowing why you're asking the question. Like I'm asking this question because it's going to uncover this thing that I solve for. You shouldn't be asking questions that don't relate to your product or service. Like it's just not a good usage of time.
I don't remember whether I told this little anecdote on the podcast already or not, but like when I was a kid, I wanted to be a lawyer really badly. And like more than anything, like I was like reading legal textbooks as like a 15-year-old. I was like super nerd, like whatever. Anyway, really wanted to be a lawyer. And I went to like a legal summer school. It was like a week long. And at the end of it, they did like a, I know, like super nerdy, but I really wanted to be a lawyer. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I went to legal summer school, and something that one of the like super high flying litigators told me at the end, like in the middle of it, I'll remember it forever. And it like severely impacted like how I approach sales for like since I was like 15 years old. And she was like, if you ask a question that you don't already know the answer to, you are derailing the entire cross-examination. And I was like, huh. And I didn't understand it. I was like, can you explain that? And she was like, okay, let's say you ask a question that you think is quote unquote interesting, right? Or that might give something to your case. Worst case scenario, what happens?
They give you something that it takes you totally off your path. And you're like scrambling and you're not prepared.
Exactly, right? She was like, you can blow your own case completely wide open by asking a question that you don't know the answer to and that you think might help. And in reality, you're now fucked and the whole case is dead because you asked a question.
Wasn't that like an objection, like leading question?
Just immediately object to yourself so you just get struck off the record. But no, like from then on, I was like, okay, well, it begs the question, what questions do I know the answer to and how can I phrase those, right? So for example, if you're selling lead gen, the answer to like the best question you can ask is, if you don't solve this, what happens, right? And the answer to that is, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
Now, if you hear, right, so talking about like tying stuff in a bow, if you hear from someone that they're railing Facebook ads, they've got 20, 30 leads a week coming in from organic, they have no problem with lead gen, and they just want to add on cold email as another channel. And you ask a question like, oh, well, what happens if you don't do this with us? And they're like, well, nothing, because I get 30 leads a week and I have organic and paid ads running. So like really and truly, not a lot, but you guys seem cool. So I'm kind of reassessing that now because you've asked a stupid question, right?
Yeah.
So like you should know the answers to the questions that you ask before you ask them, because otherwise you could end up somewhere that you don't want to be.
Very easily.
Yeah.
Very easily. And the easiest way to not ask dumb questions is just do a line of questioning.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to chip off the entire block and have a statue on the first question.
Yeah. 100%.
Like chip it off at a time,
Piece
and
by
then at
piece.
the end of the call, you should have that statue built, you know? But yeah, totally agreed. Like that's very easy. And that's a great point that you brought up. I don't think a lot of people talk about this at all. Is just not asking the right questions.
Yeah. I think the big thing that, like, especially with the sales coaching that I do, is people get into the habit of like asking questions all the time. And I'm never going to like have a go at you for asking questions. I'm going to tell you why your questions are dumb and useless, but like, I'm glad that you at least are asking questions and not just pitching off the bat. Like,
So what's the dumbest question you've heard?
I have the dumbest reply I've ever got. Right.
All right.
So I was helping Default Kings, who are like a fitness coaching program, and one of their prospects. So one of their prospects, they asked the question. Oh, like, I think the prospect asked, "Do you have like the ability to like change the diet that I'm on, because I adhere to a pretty strict diet." And they were like, "Oh yeah, no problem. Like we can customize it to whatever you need. What kind of diet are you on?" And the guy was like, "I'm a vegetarian, but I eat chicken." And I was like, I've lost all fucking hope in humanity at that point. But like, that's a good question. That's a great question. What diet do you need? We can accommodate it. And then you get that, and it's like, so you're not a vegetarian?
I'm a vegetarian, but I eat chicken.
Yeah, wild. Dumbest questions that I've heard. So this one's a bit meta, actually, but I think it's worthwhile talking about. I think that any question that starts with like the word why is a dumb question.
Yeah, because it's all perceived on the prospects.
Yeah. Why do you want to do that? Because I fucking want to. What do you mean, why? Don't ask me fucking why. Because I want to. Yeah? Like, there is no value that you gain from asking questions that start with why. That's my, like, dumbest question.
And yes or no questions, I hate.
I am a little bit more flexible on yes/no questions. I think open questions are like the like track your calories of sales. Like, ask open questions. Well, if the open questions you're asking are shit, then open questions don't matter much. But yes, I think broadly open questions are good.
All right, so not all yes/no questions are bad, but questions that have a higher discernment to be a no.
Okay.
Is bad.
Okay. Interesting. So you're not an advocate for push for the no.
Yeah, push for the yes.
Oh, interesting. We have different perspectives here then.
Yeah.
I'm a massive advocate of push for the no.
In what way?
So for example, let's say that a prospect is really struggling with like scaling an outbound team. So they have one that's working, but they don't know how to scale it and like ramp multiple reps, blah, 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 tech that goes with it, all the rest of it. And you ask them a question like, for example, how I caught myself there. I was like, what? No, follow your own fucking advice. How would the company benefit from X, Y, and Z? Right? Classic open question, right? How would the company benefit from this solution or that solution or whatever, right? That is asking them to place themselves in a future world that they have no concept of and give a reasoned, rational answer. It's almost impossible for someone to do that effectively, so you're going to get half answers. So if you flip that question on its head and invert that and be like, tell me why this would be utterly useless for the company. And they go, oh, well, I mean, I don't think it'd be useless. I think there's this problem or that problem. Okay, now you have things that you can solve for. Whereas when you ask them to paint this rosy picture of something that they have no real concept of, the likelihood is that you get more like, yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, I can see why this would be useful. And it's just false positives for you as a salesperson.
I would say that's a yes question. You're saying the tone of the question is of negative intent,
Okay.
but you're searching for a positive answer.
Okay. Then this is a discussion on like very much semantics, right? So like I'm saying I want them to tell me no. You're saying the sentiment of the message should be yes.
If you had a built sales team with the perfect tech stack in place, would that be useless to your company? And they're obviously like, well, no, would be very useful.
Right.
Yeah, that's a positive. That's a positive.
Yeah. So you're pushing for a no with a positive sentiment. Yeah. So we're literally just inverting the same issue.
Okay. I'm saying like don't ask questions that is going to make the prospect say the word no.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So like in a situation like that, where like you said, I agree with the future tensing of like, hey, like in 5 years from now, if I was able to build you a sales team, like that would be a no. That would actually probably be a no answer. Like, no, I can't tell you what it would be in 5 years. We haven't even worked together for one day.
Yeah.
So like asking, like, I don't like those questions either. Like future tensing things. What you should be doing is painting the picture, and by the end of the call, ask them what the painting looks like.
Yeah.
Like each question can be a brush stroke, and you're wanting to paint together an entire picture, right? And then at the end, you can actually warrant that answer.
Yeah,
but
100%.
6 minutes into a discovery call, when you know that they don't do LinkedIn outreach and only cold email, and you're a LinkedIn agency, like, well, imagine if you took all of your cold email efforts, translated it into LinkedIn, and then did 100 connections per rest of the day. What does that look like? I don't know. I run the call. But yeah, and like getting the prospect to say yes, I'm a true believer in.
Okay. So you big like micro yeses guy. The more they say yes, the more likely they are to say yes after a period of time.
It's just, it also just makes them feel better, like about the conversation. Like this guy made me feel positive.
Yep.
Because people buy from people they like, and the overall vibe that they get. And like the more that they're saying yes, the more that they're probably joking around, laughing, rapport building. I think that goes like a super far way in the prospect's perception of you.
I'm inclined to agree. I think this is my whole shtick is, right? Like you sell to individuals, right? No two people that you get into a room are going to behave exactly the same, think the exact same, or have the same motivations for any given thing, right?
Correct.
But with that said, there are certain people where like being super social and being like, oh yeah, fucking we're like best mates, and that's why you're going to buy from me is 100 times out of 100 going to work, and they're going to buy. Equally, there are people who are super cold, very standoffish, where you need to be kind of an asshole in order to get them to buy.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying like be like Santa Claus and be jolly. I'm saying like just make it as like it's a positive experience talking with you, and they feel genuinely good. The Grinch's heart grew, you know, like. I mean, this might be a psychology thing, but like the tonality thing, like I'm a huge believer in that as well. Like I hear a lot of people saying like match their tonality. Fuck that. Like absolutely like be above their energy.
Yes.
And they're going to want to psychologically rise up.
Yeah. 100% agreed. And it's especially when you have someone that comes in quite low energy, quite low tonality, the assumption would be that you should lower down to match them, but like that's just a race to the bottom.
Yeah, like
it's at no point is that person just going to be like, oh, you know what, 3 minutes in I'm actually really happy, and then take a jump up so that you can come back up. No, it's just going to keep going lower and lower and lower.
Yeah, I have the same energy in every call.
Yeah, same.
Like before this podcast, I was cleaning up dog poop, and like I was like, oh my god, I have like 12 meetings today, but it's like
back on,
it's back on. But yeah, you definitely got to bring the energy on the sales calls. You can't.
I think the big thing that I've learned from like reviewing so many people's sales calls is there's a difference between like being a high energy person, which I think both of us like are, and being high energy on a sales call. Because one of the lowest energy people, like super chill, like not particularly loud, that I've ever seen, even like nights out, he's still kind of pretty reserved. Like the minute he steps onto a sales call, he just like, it's like someone turns the lights on inside and he's just like bang, and he's right there, and you can see that he's like consciously thinking about it. He's very much involved in the conversation. And the difference between that and someone that's like, oh yeah, so this is what we do, and you know, like it's a pretty useful. So like, I'm not buying from the second guy ever. Like that guy basically is a moron in my mind.
Even if he has better question asking, better solution to need, like if he does all of that better, but I just don't like the conversation, I'm like, fuck, like this is a cool product or service, but I just really don't give a shit about it. Will produce lower results than the person who may not do the best discovery, but is, like you said, very present on the call, engaged, and making the person feel heard.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so we've talked about disco versus demo calls. We've kind of talked about the intricacies within that and what that actually entails.
So I have a question before we go move disco and demo. Is demo calls are very uncharted, shaky waters for salespeople, I think.
Okay.
Like the way, so like if you do a discovery call and then you book a demo call, I see a lot of sales rep flop because they just do a demo. They totally forgot the discovery.
Yes.
And they don't take good notes on the discovery. So the biggest thing for me before a demo call is hopefully you recorded the discovery call or you took really good notes. Use all of that ammunition. Yeah. Use 100%. All of that ammunition.
Like, I'm terrible for like pre-discovery call. I tend to have like less than a 30-second look at whatever the prospect's website is and go, yeah, all right. Or,
I'm saying like on the demo call,
But then before a demo call, before a second call, any of them, I will spend at least 20 minutes going through all of the notes I take at least a page of notes for every discovery call I go on, and then going back to the website, going through the case studies, understanding the business as much as I humanly can, because then at that point, going back to our previous point, you are like locked into that call. You have exactly the ammunition that you need to do a useful demo, instead of just kind of like doing the same bog standard, like, oh, and this is what we do, and this is how we help, and for like 30 minutes, and then they go, great, I didn't hear anything about me in that. That's basically useless information to me. Cool, thanks. We'll let you know.
Yeah, if you do your discovery call good enough, like your demo should never be truly the same. Yeah. Like you should know what they give a shit about and tell them, preface it in the beginning of the call. Yeah. Like, hey, John, you know, I know we spoke last time. This is what you told me. Is that still the right thing? Yes.
100%. Yes. That I want to dial in on that just for a second. The amount of like second calls, demo calls, whatever you want to call them, that I've reviewed where people don't fucking summarize what happened last time is inane. I do not understand why people don't do it. It baffles me. Because it's like, you are invested in this because you're trying to sell your thing. They have a billion other things that are going on, and you're just assuming that they've come in with the same level of knowledge, which is a bold-faced lie. Because they care about this way less than you do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, and then when you set the table for that, it might remind them of things that you did a good job of uncovering that they might have forgot about. Yeah. Right. Like, oh, yeah, last call, you told me that you guys were having a struggle, you know, with your XYZ of this thing. Oh, yeah, actually we are. That's right. Or if something has changed, like that's even more important. Like, is that still true? Yes. Micro. Yes. To my point earlier. And then you're essentially, what I always say is like, you know, I can go over everything. We have a lot of bells and whistles and cool things for you, but given on what you told me last call, which was this, and this, I'm just going to show you what's relevant. Feel free to ask questions throughout, and then ask me if you want me to expand on anything, but I want to make sure that this demo is curtailed to you, Mr. Prospect. So you're getting the best use of this time here. And we still have time for Q&A afterwards. Because a lot of people do like a 25-minute demo. You have 5 minutes left on your second call. Yeah. Like now it's going to be a 3-call close.
100%. I remember when we were looking at like tech partners for the software platform that we built. Mail.it, go and use it if you don't. Pitch. But like watching how like AEs at serious SaaS companies are doing demos. Like there was one point where I was on one and I literally just stopped them in the middle of the call. I was like, look, less than 10% of the stuff that you've talked about is useful to us. And I get that you have like a slide deck and like a way of doing demos that you've clearly been told to do, but like all I care about is this, and this. Can we just focus on that for the next 15 minutes? Because we're going to have questions at the end. And they were like, yeah, I guess. And it's like, come on. Like, I get you didn't do the discovery, right? The SDR did it, but the SDR did a great job. The SDR was brilliant. Tons of questions, really nailed exactly what we wanted. And you'd assume that that fed into whichever AE they then planted it off to, but it didn't. So at that point, I'm now listening to a pitch about basically a suite of products that are useless to me. And I'm like, why did I get on this call?
Yeah, it happens. It happens way too much. That's why the best closers are SDRs.
Yeah, I agree. If you've done a setting job, you can 100% do a closing job. Genuinely.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Because you can teach someone how to close. You can't teach someone the curiosity and like the actual want to do discovery. But yeah, SaaS AEs, I mean, given our, 2 episodes ago, like I still haven't heard from HubSpot.
It's been 2 whole weeks and they haven't actually called you back?
They haven't called me once. They just had one email.
Oh my God.
No email drips, no newsletter, nothing. No Cyber Monday deals, no Black Friday deals. Insane.
Hell. Anyway, all right. So there are going to be people out there who are one-call closing people.
Yeah.
And they're going to be like, well, I can one-call close, so why would I bother doing a 2-call close? And I think that's worthwhile talking about, because I know people who are one-call closing pretty regularly. And it seems stupid to only address the 2-call close market. So how do you effectively run a 1-call close?
You got to make it a longer call. That's the first step.
Okay.
You cannot, you can, but if you're going to do a proper discovery on like an ice cold prospect and then close them and answer all their needs and, then you're going to need at least 45.
Yeah, I would agree.
You're going to need, because you don't want to
try and cram it in 30 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. And if it is a 30-minute call, the first 3 out of the first 3 things out of your mouth should be, do we have a hard stop at this time?
Yeah.
If they say yes, that changes your entire trajectory of that call. If they say no, ask how long after the call do they have to do it? That should be like the beginning frameworks. Yep. Like, hey, I know we have a 30-minute schedule here. I actually have a couple of minutes after this call. Do you have a hard stop, or could we go over if there's extra Q&A?
Yep, 100%. And then in terms of format for that 1-call close, right? Like I have my method. If you were in the position where you're selling something that could 1-call close, or you just have a prospect that is blowing up your phone. Oh, when can we get a meeting? This is brilliant. I'm ready to buy. Blah 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 blah. How does the 1-call close work in your mind?
I would say 75 discovery, 15 pitch, and 5 like pricing negotiations, closing onboarding.
Okay, I'm basically the same. I think that in reality, most people have a few more questions than like 5% is going to answer. So like I would probably go 60, 20, 20, just because like inevitably, like as bad as it sounds, most people are not good enough at the pitch or the discovery to squeeze it in right at the end, right? There's going to need to be a little portion where you donate to potential Q&A because most people just aren't that good.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. But most of your questions should be asked and answered in that 75 part.
Yeah, 100% agreed. And then so any left should be answered during a great pitch that talks specifically to the problems that they've detailed during discovery.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to loop all the way back, right? So I know that when we started, you were like, most businesses are not going to be able to do like a 1-call close. I think that's true. I think, however, most people should aim for a 1-call close because Parkinson's law, the longer you stretch something out, the more likely it is to take that long.
Absolutely.
If we set the expectation that the goal is close everyone in one call and it actually takes two, okay, I don't care. If we set the goal, we're going to close in two and it takes three and I don't care, well, now you potentially halved sales velocity, potentially.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, okay, the goal should be run a fantastic discovery in call one, do a solid pitch, and if there is the requirement of like second or third calls, then understand that that is the reality of your situation. Schedule call two at the end of call one, because inevitably they will have questions. If they're not like, yeah, 100%, I'm sold, let's do it. Great. Schedule that call. Yeah. And then call two is a decision-making call.
Don't ever make a call two if it's not needed.
Yeah, oh my God. I remember speaking to someone and they were like, yeah, so like at the moment I'm closing on one call at like, almost 50%, but I saw other people doing two call closes. Should I do two call closes? And I'm like, no, you shouldn't. You should keep doing exactly what you're doing and just get better at that. Because why the hell are you going to lengthen your sales cycle because other people take two calls to close? That's just a waste of your time.
Waste of your time.
Yeah, 100%.
So one call closes, if you're selling if you're in like an agency or a coaching program or things that are sold to individuals, more so, or smaller entities, highly recommend the one call close.
Yeah, agreed. I think
if you're selling an organization where you impact multiple people's jobs and roles and responsibilities, most likely two call. Just to set expectation.
Is there like a quote unquote like employee number that acts as a heuristic in your mind for where like something transfers from like a business or an agency to an organization?
Yeah, if they have like over 20 employees.
Probably. That was going to be my number two. Like more than 25 employees, and now we're dealing with a behemoth that is going to take longer to close.
Yeah, and they might have like a finance department, accounting department. You have to give them a W-9 to become a vendor. Like there's always other things that people probably don't even understand that is required from like a business, like a C corporation entity, not an LLC, that you're going to need to account for and not be like too pushy on it.
Yeah, agreed. All right. I'm looping all the way back. You brought up football, so I'm bringing this back up. We did not do your version of objection handling last week, so we're doing it this week.
Go for it.
All right.
So what is the situation first?
Okay, we've talked about multiple decision makers the entire time. Let's see how you deal with selling into two different people, and they want to include someone else in the deal. So end of call one, both of them are pretty bought in, but they want to include a couple of other stakeholders on the second call.
Understood.
Cool. Dylan, this all sounds great. Everything that we've spoken about is, you nailed our problems. That is exactly what we're facing right now. But the big issue is we've got to involve people from finance. I know that our CRO is going to want to get involved. We've got a couple of people that we'd want to bring into the call next time just to make sure that everyone's aligned and everyone's kind of got their questions answered. Is that fine?
Yeah, David, totally understand and totally a valid ask, right? So my only question to you, David, is obviously finance needs to get involved. This thing costs money. The CRO, is he the individual that has to ultimately sign the contract?
No, that would be me.
Okay, so you're the one that's making the decision.
100%. We just need visibility across the board.
100%.
I'm sure he has questions that he's going to want to ask you that's more specialized to what those guys are doing. But yeah, from everything you told me and our marketing guy, we're good to go. But he needs to be involved in this.
Fantastic. So what we normally do in this situation, David, is I'll send you over the contract. We get that executed, and then when we loop in everyone that's going to need visibility is on our onboarding call. So we'll have a call with every single person. We can even do department-specific calls, give them visibility, and actually have a more in-depth conversation that's relevant to their responsibilities in their department on how automated revenue is going to be affecting that. Does that sound fair?
Yes, but the only thing that I would say is I know that he's going to want to have some questions for you specifically before we sign. That's going to be used, I guess, internally as like a decision-making process. We're going to make sure that like everyone's aligned that this is the right thing to be doing. I'm pretty happy with it. Like I said, you've sold me effectively, but we didn't manage to get him on the call today, and I think we're going to need another call just so that he feels like his voice is heard.
Okay, and what does he normally need to hear to make a confident decision in your understanding of working with him?
Yeah, so I think the big one, I think the economics of working this out, like how much, how much revenue we're likely to see as a result of working with you is going to be a big one for him. How much internal resource, if any, is going to be allocated to this. Whether we're going to need to, bring in other sorts of tech partners, all those kinds of stuff that is very much his ballpark and that I don't really sit on. I don't really know the questions he's going to ask, but gut instinct, it's probably going to be those.
Understood. So you're a sales guy, right, David? You and I have both had situations like this, right, where you're at the finish line, you want to add in other stakeholders. Maybe he, gets sick next week. This gets pushed off 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You told me specifically that if you don't implement what we do here, you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah.
So in regards to working on the logistics, that's totally fine and a warranted ask. But my question to you, right, is if we get off this call and we don't make a decision here, what is truly being left on the table from an ROI perspective?
Yeah, we went over this. It's a significant amount of money. I completely agree with you that it's definitely not in our interest to delay this. I'm looking at his calendar right now, and I can see that he has a spot open at the end of the week. I know that I have that open. If we don't get marketing guy in, no big deal. But so long as we can have that call with the two of us and we can get all of the questions answered, we'll be good to go.
Understood. So let's book that in, David.
Sure.
I'll put that on the calendar. What I will do in the meantime, in the interim, to make this a more fast and efficient process is I took some notes on the questions that he's probably going to want to hear, right? I'm going to send you an email with the contract as well as a Loom video going over exactly what you told me. I'll send that to you and him. I'll CC him on the email.
Sweet.
If those answers the questions, do you think this is something that we could sign midweek and make that Friday call an actual onboarding call?
Yeah. So long as he doesn't have any questions and we can get it ironed out, I don't see a problem.
Awesome. So I know this is a very important need for you, and I want to be cognizant of your timeline and your business. So I'll send those two things over. I'll CC the CRO on there. If we have any questions, we can hash it out on email, or more than happy to do that on that Friday call.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Sweet. I want to dig into what you did there because it was really interesting. So you explain your thought process and I'll explain on the receiving end how it came across.
Yeah. So, I mean, at some point, you don't want to be the too pushy sales guy, right? This guy is sold. He's bought in. You don't want to tarnish the relationship and like make him see you as like, I thought that one was kind of cool, but now he's kind of being an asshole.
Yeah.
And like, honestly, there's some valid questions there, right? Like that guy needs to be logistics. He's the CRO. It's not like this is my intern marketing person that I really want, who I'm going to make use your product and not me. So there were valid reasons there. I did navigate to the point where I thought was sufficient enough, right? To where I felt like this was an actual valid objection. And the end of the week isn't the worst thing in the world. And I kind of did a compromise with that loan.
Yeah, 100%. I think that the big thing that I picked up on is like, just because I said, oh yeah, we need to bring this guy in, you didn't immediately fold.
Yeah.
Because that's, I think, one thing that I've noticed from doing these call reviews regularly is that like when the first like objection that comes up that is like, oh yeah, we need to bring this person in, they do the right thing, which is push for that call, but you need to exhaust the options and be like, okay, but let's talk about this. Why is this relevant? Why is this important? Blah, 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 blah. Because there is the off chance that they're like, yeah, you know what? You're right. We don't need that. Fine. Fuck it. Let's do it. And then you've saved yourself 4 or 5 days and potentially saved yourself a deal. Let's say the CRO is an asshole and doesn't want to do it. Well, what are you going to do then?
Yeah.
You've sold into
you gotta at least, you got to give it a college try.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. But the other interesting thing was like the first questions or like one of the first questions you asked, it's like, okay, what does he care about? Tell me exactly what you think he's going to ask, and then I'll be in a better position to kind of understand where the lay of the land is, right? Understanding that decision criteria is so important, and most people have no concept of it. We just taught this in client ascension like 2 weeks ago because people had kind of gotten to the level where they were doing the right stuff and they were getting bombarded with this as a problem. So like, yeah, understand decision criteria. Find out what matters to that person and then try to influence those criteria.
I had a call yesterday. He's the co-founder, right? He essentially manages the sales side of things. And he's, I need my business partner involved in the decision. He's ultimately the one that funds these things. So I was like, great. Like, what does he care about? Is he more analytical? Is he more like, totally money driven? Like, what is that? And he's like, oh, well, he cares about this, this, and that. And I wrote it all down. I'm like, all right, great. Now I know how to talk to him on that call. Thank you.
100%. Yeah. And I think the big consideration is if you don't do that and the assumption is, oh, yeah, it's fine, just bring them along, and you go into it blind, you're now dealing with someone who is completely cold. You can't assume that person has been pre-sold by whatever stakeholder you've been in the room with.
Now you have another 2 call close.
All right. I think that wraps us up today.
I think this is a good session.
Yeah.
Episode 4 in the books.
Done.
Melody link in the description.
Use my product. Bye.